everybody. Welcome to another Tuesday night with the Piano Man. This is your show for classical piano and fresh puns with your host, David Benjamin.
I know there's a bit of a delay, so I was waiting for a sec. I'm not quite sure when I came on, but hello, everybody. You might notice that I am talking to the wide-angle cameras. For some reason, my nice little webcam here, actually, I don't think the problem's the webcam, but the webcam decided to not work tonight. The issue seems to be the ginormous extension cable it's plugged into. Obviously, we discovered this a few minutes before the show started, so I haven't had time to test and see exactly what the issue is. It's been working fine up until now, and I've been using the same cable every couple of weeks when I do my shows. I don't know what the deal is. But stupid cables, So, hey, yeah, I just saw Amanda said we started on time. I'm like, within 5 minutes of the scheduled start time. We're doing really good. This is like radio time for Vaudacity. And if Craig's watching, he'll appreciate that, because in radio you have to be right spot on every single thing you're doing. There's, I think he said, for certain things like station identifications, that sort of thing, there's like a 5 or maybe 10-second window in which you can say it, so you don't have to be like right on the dot. But yeah, everything is scheduled down to the second. So for us, this is the Vaudacity equivalent of being on the radio. Also, there's video. So it's not really like being on the radio at all, but It's also a little weird talking to the wide angle camera. I'm so used to looking over here. I have to remind myself, nope, look over there. So, welcome to my living room for the evening. It's funny that they call it a living room, actually, because it's not living. And nobody really lives in one. Have you ever noticed that with a living room? Nobody really lives in it. You live in the family room. And they still call it a family room if you live alone and there's no other family there. It's baffling. Utterly baffling. So, tonight, I'm periodically check the chat, which is on my iPad to the left of my monitor over here. So if you see me repeatedly look that direction, it's not a nervous tick. I'm not the old man. Just the chat's over there. So, tonight's show is a bit of a birthday celebration for the Chickering grand piano in the living room here. This piano was, according to the Chickering Foundation, which is a nonprofit society that I think honestly probably consists of less than 10 people. They have a website where they track as many serial numbers as they can track down of Chickering pianos. Chickering, for those of you who haven't heard of it, and quite possibly a lot of you haven't, Chickering was established back in 1823 as an American piano company. And over the years, especially when they got to, when they built this one, they were making pianos that today would be the equivalent quality of a Steinway. I mean, these pianos hold their tune remarkably well. Which reminds me, I need to call a tuner, but that's beside the point. They hold their tune extremely well. Overall, they're very, very, very well-made pianos. Unfortunately, for those who buy them, except for me, they don't tend to hold a lot of value. There's not a lot of brand recognition with Chickering anymore, even though they are just as good as Steinways from the same period, or a variety of others. I don't know offhand how long Busendorfer's been around, but there's a number of other like top-tier piano brands, and Chickering is right up there. In fact, Chickering was the only piano that Franz Liszt would play when he toured in the U.S. in the, I think, like 1840s, 1830s. That was the only piano he would play. And there is a Chickering piano in his museum in Budapest that was sent, I think, I want to say after he died in the 1880s. Anyhow. And my screen turned off. Yay for screen timeouts. Yes, sorry, there's the puns. Where was I? Chickering. Yes, so anyhow, so they don't hold their value very well. So they tend to not be very expensive pianos. Now, by not very expensive, This one was unbelievably cheap. I got it as a consignment sale of all things from a piano store over in Glendale. Apparently it belonged to a woman who had it in the LA area for 40 odd years, and I don't know when exactly, but she had to go into a nursing home, had to give up the piano, so they had sold it to, or put it on consignment with a piano moving company. And it apparently sat in a warehouse for a long time before they finally decided to put it in the showroom over in the piano store in Glendale and sell the thing. But I think by then the pandemic was starting and stuff was happening. Nobody was in the market for a piano, so they had marked this thing down to maybe about a third of the original cost. And I went in, and the only piano I played in the store, and said, yep, that's the one I'm taking. That's it. That's the one I want. But, when I say don't hold their value very well, for a used one that has not recently been restored, you can get them fairly inexpensively. If you want a fully restored Chickering piano, depending on the size and the exact year and everything, they can run you anywhere from $25,000 to $40,000. So not cheap. But if you compare it to an equivalent Steinway that's worth more like 80 or 90,000, Chickering's a lot less expensive for just as good a piano. So anyhow, this piano, long opening monologue here. It's a good thing I'm not a bad guy, because the good guys would be gaining the upper hand right about now. This piano they finished construction early February 1889, and it was shipped, completely finished, and shipped to their showroom in Baston at the end of February 1889. I don't remember the exact date offhand, although the very helpful person and possibly sole member of the Chickering Foundation did give me a date. I do remember that. I just forgot to look it up prior to my show. This piano is turning 133 years old within the next couple of days. In recognition of that, actually Jamie Carganella suggested that I look at stuff that was written in 1889, and so I decided to do just that. Now, when performing Google searches for classical piano music written in 1889 or published in 1889, there's a bit of a dearth of options that come up. Dearth is a weird word. It sounds like birth or mirth, but it means lack. I don't know. I've always found that to be a very strange word, dearth. Anyhow, it sounds like dirt. I'm rambling. I do that when I'm monologuing. So I've got some pieces on the computer that have publication dates written, right on the score. Sometimes they do that. The publishers do that. So there were some that I know just from playing them in the past that I knew were written or published in 1889. There were some others where, I knew that the composer was alive and actively writing music in that time period. And so I was looking up some opus numbers to see when those were published, to kind of let me hone in, see if they published or wrote any piano music in that year. So I came up with a few other options. And then there were a few that are only loosely connected with the year. So I'm going to be starting off in celebrating this piano's birth, so to speak, with some pieces written by composers who died in 1889. Loose connection there. Check the chat here. Jeremy, very good, Chim Chickering. And yes, Mother, I was not going to segue. I know it's segue, but it looks like segue. Another very strange word. I was not going to segue from the piano's birthday to yours. My mother's birthday is coming up in a little under a week. So happy birthday to my mom, the most wonderful mom on the face of the earth. Looking forward to your birthday and celebrating that remotely with you. So where was I? Oh yes, composers who died in 1889. So this first piece I'm playing is by a British composer. There aren't that many well-known actually there aren't any well-known British composers from the late 19th century. Elgar was kind of the first one to really become known after Handel. And Handel wasn't even British by birth. He just lived in London for a good chunk of his life. Elgar didn't really start becoming famous until after the turn of the century, but he was writing music in 1889, thereabouts, 1890s. This piece, though, this was written by a guy named Sidney Smith. He was a British pianist and composer, and he didn't really write much in the way of concert music. His focus was on the stuff that would make you money. So he would write music that was popular at the time. It was short, lighter fare, intended for a salon or a sitting room, which is appropriate, actually. Sitting room, see, that's a room name that makes sense because you sit in it. But a living room, I guess you live in it, but you don't live in it, if you know what I mean. Anyway, Sidney Smith wrote a staggering number of compositions. He was only 49 when he died. I don't know offhand what his cause of death was, obviously very young. Yeah, Jeremy, Handel was always a little off to the side, but at least he wasn't like Franz Josef, who was hiding all the time. So Sidney Smith wrote a lot of shorter, lighter piano pieces. And he did sort of arrangements you could play at home of larger concert works. So one of my most favorite pieces by Mendelssohn is Rondo in B minor for piano and orchestra. So it'll sound similar to a piano concerto because you have piano and orchestra going at the same time, but it's a single movement work as opposed to a concerto, which is usually 3 or 4 movements, 3 or 4 different pieces kind of stuck together is what that sounds like in reality. So look up Mendelssohn's Rondo in B minor. It's just, I love it. Sidney Smith wrote a solo piano arrangement of that piece where he had to take the orchestra part, combine it with the piano part, and make it all somehow playable on a single piano keyboard. And he did a remarkably good job with it. I think it's shorter than the original piece. I think that there's probably some parts that he left out. He kind of condensed it. But that was the kind of thing that he would do. It was following in the footsteps of composers like Franz Liszt, but Liszt's stuff was astronomically, insanely difficult to play. It's not the kind of thing that your everyday piano player at home would be able to handle. I can't play most of what Liszt wrote. It's just way too difficult. So Smith, he wrote much more approachable compositions. So after all that about the Mendelssohn, that's not what I'm playing. This first piece is called Tarantella. It's a piece that Smith wrote under one of his 2 pseudonyms. He wrote a lot of stuff under his own name, but I don't know why. He also used the name Victor Delacour and Paul Beaumont. Yeah, and so this is under the Paul Beaumont name. Again, don't know why he used pseudonyms. I don't know what the incentive was for that. It could be maybe these were published by a publisher in France. Maybe that's why Victor Delacour and Paul Beaumont, maybe that's why they've got French last names. Don't know. Might have made them more approachable than a British last name in terms of sales in France during that time period. That would be my guess. So, without further ado, Tarantella by Paul Beaumont. Sidney Smith, whatever the hell his name was. And if that doesn't put a little pizzazz in your step, I don't know what will. That's a piece, excuse me. That's a piece I originally discovered in an anthology book that I think my dad had when he was learning how to play piano. And so originally I had no idea that there was this guy named Sidney Smith using pseudonyms. I just knew that this random piece called Tarantella by this guy named Paul Beaumont. That was all I knew about it. Until years and years later when I discovered that Paul Beaumont and Sidney Smith were one and the same. Yeah, that's a fun little piece. And just goes to show you can have light music that isn't necessarily fit for a concert hall in the conventional sense, but it's loads of fun and it's great music. It's not considered brilliant or anything like that. But it's just a great piece. Next up, I'm going to rewind the clock a little bit. There's another composer who also died in 1889. And the reason why let's make the order here that I'm going in. Okay. So he's got a connection to some stuff I'm playing later. This composer was, I believe, Austrian by birth. His name is Adolf Henselt. Considered one of the finest pianists in Europe when he was alive, but had horrific stage fright. I mean, he could not handle performing in front of an audience. And there's stories of people going to call on him and just standing there and listening through the door, listening to him practice. Because apparently his legato, his smooth playing, his melody lines were just absolutely exquisite and perfect and phenomenal piano player. He didn't write a tremendous amount of music, which is probably one of the reasons why he's not all that well known today, but he had an enormous influence on the course of music in Europe and in Russia. I think around the time he stopped composing, he took a job as basically the head musician in the Tsar's court in Russia. He was to be, piano instructor and just kind of run the show, so to speak, musically in the Tsar's palace. So, among others, he heavily influenced the Russian school of music in the latter half of the 19th century. I believe he taught Tchaikovsky, it's a name you'll recognize, among countless other Russian musicians from the mid-19th century. So this is Opus 32, so this is towards the end of his opus numbers. I think he wrote up into maybe the 40s or so. And he's another one, actually. I mentioned that Mendelssohn Rondo for piano and orchestra, Rondo in B minor. Look that up. Henselt's Piano Concerto in F minor. He only wrote one. It is a fantastic piece of music. Incredibly difficult piano part. Not anything I will ever play, but just is one of my favorite concertos. All right, so now that which one was still one of the finest pianists after he was no longer alive? Well, Hunter, that would probably be whichever one was the best at decomposing. I'd have to say, yeah, that's my final answer. And by final, I do mean final, because, the guy's dead. Anywho, so this piece I'm playing tonight, this is one I actually literally started looking at and learning yesterday. It's entitled Nocturne. It's very much in the style of Chopin's Nocturnes. Chopin and an Irish pianist by the name of John Field really pioneered that genre of, Nocturne is typically a very melodic based piece of music, typically fairly, gentle in overall feeling. It's not high energy like that Tarantella was a minute ago. So this is Nocturne Opus 32 by Adolf Henselt, and hope you guys like it. Yeah, hope you guys like that one. That's one I just really fallen in love with in a day. A lot of Henselt's music I never really looked at all that seriously before, just because I know that he was a phenomenally good piano player, and a lot of what he wrote is really, really challenging stuff. Um, but I kind of poked through and was like, okay, well, what can I learn really, really quickly? And this one I opened. This is actually one of the first ones I opened. It was like, hey, this looks playable by a normal person. So more on Henselt a little bit later, or really not Henselt directly, but yeah, you'll see what I mean. So this next piece is the last one by a composer who, in 1889, is German composer by the name of Gustav Lange. And Dad, if you're watching, I'm sorry if I butchered the pronunciation. It's Lange is the last name. So I'm kind of guessing here. I don't know a tremendous amount about him because I forgot to research him. But, that's just what I do. I forget things. But, he was a, mid-19th century German composer. I think he was more along the lines of a Sidney Smith type of composer, meaning he didn't write, a lot of concert hall worthy pieces, like Chopin or Liszt or some of those better known composers did. But he wrote some cool stuff. And this particular one is called Song of the North. To me, feels very German. And I hope you guys like it. All right. I see my mom says another great piece. I agree. I actually really like that one. It's a fun one. And with that, we will move on from composers who kicked the proverbial bucket, but not Disney popcorn bucket, because there's too many. There's 99 of those, and they're all in bars anyway. We'll move on from composers who kicked that bucket and move on to composers who didn't kick the bucket in 1889, who were actually quite alive and well and actively writing music in 1889. I mean, I can't get over how long ago that was, 133 years ago. You know, if you go back in time from 1889 to 133 years before 1889, do some quick math here, that would be 1756. Yeah, that was like Mozart time, you know, that yeah, he was born right around then. And so, you know, composers like, let's see, Haydn might still have been a little bit too young to be right. I don't remember exactly when Haydn was born. It was right, you know, not long after Johann Sebastian Bach died. Yeah, so firmly right smack in the classical period, as opposed to what I'm playing tonight, which is stuff from the Romantic period. Yes, 99 popcorn buckets. Could you tell that most of us didn't know what to do with that suggestion in 99 the other night? It's like, It's a downside of only doing Polly's Picnics or online variety show, rather. A couple times a month or once a month, is you get really rusty on some of these things, and you stop thinking the right way to come up with jokes about it. It's which in and of itself is kind of funny. Maybe I should go enlist. At least that way could be a colonel and get those popcorn buckets, because colonel, and yeah, never mind. See what I mean? That was terrible. I shouldn't have said that. All right, moving on. So the next selection is by none other than Edward Elgar. This is Opus 7, which I believe was, I don't know if it was published in 1889, but he wrote it around that time period. Some of his pieces, I'm going to play another one of his pieces in a little bit. And it looks like it might have been written in 1889, but it was certainly published quite a long time after that. So anyhow, this is called Sebianya. Be written probably in memory of a visit to Seville in Spain. And yeah, it's interesting. Elgar, there's a lot of criticism directed at him for essentially not being an amazing composer until much later in his life. He took a long time to mature in his compositional abilities and techniques and so forth. And he didn't write a whole lot of music directly for piano. I've played some other pieces by Elgar on my show before, but it's usually been transcriptions. He could play piano. He composed at the piano. He was a very good pianist. But for whatever reason, his musical expression he felt was better communicated through orchestra, through choral pieces. He wrote a lot at the Great Barrier Reef. A lot of his choral pieces came from there. That was what he wrote the majority of his music for, were those types of ensembles. Not so much for solo piano. This is an exception to that, and a wonderful exception to that. And thank you, Kelsey Blaine Gibson. I just saw the super chat. Thank you so much. You love this show. I do too, and so glad you're here every week. Well, I hope you're not here every week. Consider I'm on every other week. And that Dari's show is on an hour earlier than mine. You might get a little lonely if you're sitting around waiting at 7:30 after Dari's show. It's funny that I attribute what am I saying? See, I've talked before about how I don't have the internal monologue thing that I guess a lot of people have. I don't have a voice in my head saying stuff and then my mouth repeats it. It's just not how I open my mouth, words come out. It's like magic somehow. But it also occasionally leads me down verbal rabbit holes where I wind up in the middle of a sentence. I don't know where I was going with it. Or I'll just say stuff and then I'll think, why did that just come out of my mouth? I could turn that into a That's What She Said, but I won't. All right. Rewinding back to Elgar. Sebianya, Opus 7 by Edward Elgar, possibly written sometime around 1889. I don't know. It's a cool piece. Since I don't have headphones in, I'm completely guessing at the length of applause here. If in fact, Amanda's probably playing an applause track after everything. I often forget that that's happening because, no headphones. We're running it off of her computer, so I can't hear what she's doing. Fun times. Hope you guys like that one. That was kind of a surprise little find. I was looking for stuff that Elgar had written possibly in 1889, and it seemed like Opus 7 was right around the right time period. Couldn't find an exact date of composition for that particular piece. So now... Oh, we're talking about Lily. Yes, I know. One of these days, I will have Miss Lily on camera, at least briefly. We've had her for, about a week and a half almost. And she's doing really, 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 really well overall. But we still don't completely trust her as far as potty training goes. She seems to get that she's supposed to go outside. She does not yet seem to understand that she's supposed to go in a specific area outside. So that's the kind of the next task. And part of the problem is the area that we want her to go. We have no way of keeping her there until she goes. She can easily scoot around and wander off if she wants. So it's going to be the next challenge, is figuring out that part of the potty training. But she is no longer, at least purposely, going in the house. She's also hasn't learned yet how to tell us that she needs to go outside. That's kind of the other half of that equation there, is why if we're not supervising her, we don't want her just running around yet. So she's in the kitchen where she can't really do any damage. At least none that we know of. But yeah, she's... yeah, so Diane, I promise, we will have her, one of us at least will have her on our show at some point in time when... I'm pretty sure she's not going to pee on me if I pick her up. She hasn't. She's only done that once. But I'm not totally confident in that. And part of the problem is she doesn't give any indication she has to go to the bathroom. It's to just start going when we're outside. There's certain times of the day we know it. Anyhow, she's penned up in the kitchen at the moment. Not very happily, but what are you going to do? Better than having to run her down every little while. Other than that, she is an absolute wonderful dog. She's very smart. She's extremely sweet and cuddly. She and Lucy are slowly learning how to get along, and she met my chinchillas inadvertently the other night. She wandered into the room, and I don't think she really noticed them until one of them moved, and good golly, the amount she jumped was hysterically funny. And a little sad note, I lost one of my chinchillas last week. Houdini died, I think it was on Wednesday. We kind of blurred together a bit. But lost Houdini last week, which was sad, not unexpected. He's a chinchilla, small, cute, small, fuzzy rodent. He hadn't looked very good in a long time. I think probably, I'm guessing he couldn't see very well the last couple of years, and he was 16 years old. Chinchillas in captivity live 15 to 20. He was 16. My other two seems like are still going strong. They look good. They're still very active, and to the point of going, whenever the dog gets close. So I know they're still alive and kicking. Anyhow, so many tangents tonight. If Hunter wasn't in the audience, I'd try my hand at geometry. The number of tangents. But I'll take Hunter as a sign that I probably shouldn't do that. Next piece. This is one I played on my show before. It's by Francis Tomé. I have no idea if this was written or published in 1889 or even close to 1889. I know that he was, pretty sure he was alive and active in 1889. He was another composer who wrote a lot of salon type music, not concert hall stuff. This one is called, the title's in French. The first word looks like the English word simple. I don't know if it is the same as the word simple in English, but that's the first word. And then aveu, I think, aveu. I'm not sure how to pronounce the second word. It's A-V-E-U. So if anybody knows French, that's the title. I don't know the French pronunciation. The English subtitle in this score is Simple Confession. It's yet another thing I forgot to look up to see if it was accurate. And then it's further subtitled Song Without Words. Who speaks French? Yes. I wish my sister was watching. She speaks French, but she's in New York, so she's probably like asleep or something. Yeah. Anyhow, we'll go with unless somebody. Ooh, Zach, I'm sorry to hear that you had a job interview where they lied about a bunch of stuff. That sucks. And from horror stories I've heard, I don't know how uncommon that is for companies to kind of gloss over things, or they do hire you and you're suddenly doing a different job than the one you thought you were being hired for. I think we had a friend where that happened. So I wish you luck, Zach, in further job hunting. Hopefully this is the worst interview you will ever have. Yeah, that just sucks, dude. Sorry. Anyhow, okay, moving on to happier stuff. Composers who are dead now, but who were alive in 1889 and wrote cool music. So, Francis Tomei, Simple Confession, Song Without Words. Here we go! Good Lord, how's it already been an hour? Oh boy. All right. Yeah, that's a fun piece. I really like that one. Next up. So we're going to get back to my reference to Henselt earlier. He influenced a lot of, really the course of Russian, at least piano music, in the latter half of the 19th century. And one of those composers that he had a major influence on through the influence of others, meaning that, he taught composers like Tchaikovsky, who turned around and taught composers like Zoloty, which I will get to in a little bit. Well, not composers, but he was a pianist, who then turned around and taught composers like Scriabin and Rachmaninoff and all those guys. And thank you for the super chat, Mom. Great job tonight. Thank you so much. Yeah, this has been fun. I've been doing too much talking, but it's been fun. Believe it or not, I'm not like drunk or anything. But what I got here, my new favorite drink du jour is black cherry soda with probably a couple shots worth of heavy cream and a shot or two of amaretto. It is, if you like sweet, fruity drinks, it is incredible. Another one of my favorites, this is based it off of, another one of my favorites is putting some heavy cream in with an orange cream soda and adding vodka. I call it the Screw You, Julius, or the Et tu, Brute, if you want to go that route. Kind of a fun take on a orange Julius versus a screwdriver. Just combine them. Anyhow, this is a prelude written by Scriabin in 1889. It says so right on the page there. It's a very short little piece. He was a teenager in 1889. It's very early Scriabin. Yeah, Mom, I never met a sweet anything I didn't like. Yeah, can't think of anything. That's it. That's the whole piece. Very short. Okay, I got a couple more here. This next one, we're going back to Elgar. This is Opus 12, Love's Greeting, Salute d'amour. It was given I think the French title. The publisher thought that it wouldn't sell very well under an English title, so they gave it the French title. I believe it was originally written for piano and violin. This is obviously, well, last I checked, we don't have any violins here. So it's a little difficult and neither one of us plays violin. Or fiddle, for that matter. They're the same instrument. So anyhow, this is one I played on my show before. I think the night I did all Elgar. So this is a piece that I think actually might have been written around 1889. It was not published until, might have been after the turn of the century. It was quite some time later that it was actually published. And this is the piece that really put Elgar on the map as a composer, long before he wrote some of his much more famous compositions. And this is one of my favorites. Oh, and in case I forgot to mention, the title of that previous piece by Scriabin was just called Prelude from 1889. But anyhow, Love's Greeting, Salute d'amour by Elgar. All right, salute de more. All right, I think given the time, I was going to play a couple of pieces by Scriabin, which are not overly long, but long enough. I think I'll skip those, especially since I wasn't feeling totally confident about them. They're pieces I've played before. It's a prelude and nocturne, but written for left hand alone. You're only supposed to use one hand to play it, but the way he wrote it, it sounds like there's two hands on the keyboard. It's really quite remarkable. Now, it's another fairly early composition of his. I'll save that for another night. So, I have not done an improv yet tonight. I think I'll do that, and then I'll play one more, and we'll call it a night here. So, this is actually I'm gonna minimize this music on the screen so I don't get distracted. We'll see what I come up with. Okay, I don't know where that came from, but the main melody line there, that I did not make that up. That is, oh, crud. What is that called? Now I have to look it up. Sorry, bear with me for a sec here. Liszt used that tune in a piece called Totentanz Dance of the Dead, but the tune very much predated Liszt by a very large margin. Says it's a paraphrase of Dies Irae. It's based on a Gregorian plain chant melody, the setting of Dies Irae, which is from, probably the most famous one is the one by Mozart in his Requiem, Mass for the Dead. So it's part of the Latin Mass in the Catholic Church, Gregorian plain chant melody. So it's this. Really, really cool tune. Totentanz is incredible by Liszt. That's another piece for piano and orchestra. It's Totentanz, Totentanz. Really, really cool piece. Look it up. Anyhow, so yeah, I don't know, just kind of started working that melody and something, I don't know where it came from. All right, last piece of the evening is another one. This is a transcription. Oh, did Amanda just say something? Oh, she did say something. What did Amanda say? Oh, promos. Yes, let's do promos first. Let Amanda take care of those. Lucy apparently is going nutso balzo. I can't believe it. See, no monologue. I can't believe I just said that. What's going on up there? Oh, good. Lucy tangled herself up in the cords and then tried to run. Okay. I'll let Amanda do the announcements. I'm just going to sit here and sip my cherry cream soda and take it away, Amanda. And I'm going to stare at the camera awkwardly the entire time, except you probably won't be able to see it because promos will be on the screen. Darn.
Well, here are our promos for this week. Tomorrow is my show, Amanda on Demanda. It's going to be Julie Andrews night. So it's tomorrow at 7:30. If you have any last-minute requests, send it in to www.amandasings.live, and we'll see if it makes it on the wheel tomorrow. So again, join us. That's 7:30 right here on the Vaudacity Network. Then on Thursday, we have the Lovecast with Hunter Ackerman. We're on number 95. That's live acoustics, originals, and covers. So join us. That's, again, Thursday at 6 o'clock p.m. Then on Friday, the 25th at 7:30, we have another episode of The Cove, Music and Musings with Paul Carganilla and friends. We are up to episode 23, so watch it live inside your YouTubes on the Vaudacity Network. Coming up in the future, we are going to have a Step for Suicide Prevention, virtual and in person, 15th annual Walk with Hope. So that's going to be on Saturday, March 19th. And there's going to be a virtual and in-person Vaudacity show that's happening. So check that out. We're going to do a telethon on the 14th, 8 o'clock to 10 o'clock p.m. There's going to be matching donations. So please join us for this important fundraiser. So. And then a little bit further into the future still, we have Polly's Picnic on a Boat, April 1st to the 4th. If you have not found out your details, if you would want to go and you have not yet signed up, go ahead and visit the Facebook group or message Anna Ginavola for more details. And with that, we will bring it back to David Benjamin.
All right. I guess promos are over, right? Hopefully promos are over. All right. Last piece of the night. So, remember I talked about Henselt earlier, who was, I believe, a teacher of Tchaikovsky. Tchaikovsky, in turn, taught a Russian virtuoso pianist and impresario. I had to look up impresario to see what it meant. Somebody puts on concerts and shows and such. The guy's name was Alexander Zloty. And he was, by all accounts, a phenomenal pianist and performer. And I don't think he wrote anything of his own. I don't think he was a composer, but he was somebody else who had a huge influence on Russian music. He, I believe, taught both Rachmaninoff and Scriabin. He was about 10 years older than they were. So, I mean, the guy's in his mid-20s, and he's teaching these teenagers. And yeah, he was kind of like Robert Schumann in a lot of ways, where he was able to make a lot of people's careers, or at least give them a good start and good, networking contacts, all that kind of stuff. He was very, very good at that. And he was a professor at the Moscow Conservatory, which is where Scriabin and Rachmaninoff, among others, went when they were teenagers to study music. So this particular piece, because Zloty was a student of and colleague of Tchaikovsky, Zloty is the guy who's responsible, if you ever have heard Tchaikovsky's first piano concerto, those big giant opening chords that are like in just huge chords. You have to practically roll them because you have to reach such giant intervals on the piano keyboard. Apparently Zloty was responsible for that, and he performed that piece with Tchaikovsky, I believe, conducting it for the first time. So anyhow, very, very influential musician during his time, but sadly very unknown today, at least in Western countries. So this is one that you guys will probably recognize. I won't spoil the surprise. This is also another one I learned yesterday, so we'll see how I do here. But I absolutely love it. I've played it through a bunch of times yesterday and today, and it's just totally love it. And I will tell you what it is afterwards, or feel free to put in the chat if you know what this is from. Again, as a hint, this is a transcription, not originally a piano piece. Zloty made the transcription himself. It is a piece by Tchaikovsky, and from everything I read, it was written, he was working on it in 1889. I don't know exactly when it was published. I think maybe a year or two at the most after that. So it might have been published 1889, 1890, somewhere in that neighborhood. Also, if you are a Disney fan and a fan of the old classic Disney movies, you will recognize this if I, play all the right notes. right. That was fun. And for those of you who might not have guessed it, that was from Tchaikovsky's world-famous ballet, Sleeping Beauty. Also used, the music was used in the Disney movie of the same name. All right. Oh, apparently I have a Venmo. Thank you very much. From Jeremy. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you so much. Yeah, Amanda's having to shout that down because I can't see that stuff on my own screen here. Anyhow, yeah, I thought that would be a fun one to end the evening, and hope you guys liked it. Not bad for only having started to look at it yesterday. That is part of a suite of pieces that Zloty transcribed from Sleeping Beauty. I don't know offhand if he did any other Tchaikovsky ballets. In fact, this that particular set of transcriptions, I don't even have a folder on my computer for Zloty. That was sitting in my Tchaikovsky folder. I found it. I was looking for stuff maybe Tchaikovsky wrote in 1889, and holy smokes, Sleeping Beauty was written around that time. So anyhow, thank you guys so much for joining me tonight, and scheduled for 2 weeks from now, and looking forward to that concert too. And thank you. Oh, I got a super chat from Barbara. Yes, thank you, Mom. Let me scroll back up, see if it's still in here. I did. Oh, there it is. Relaxing, listening to piano pieces. Yes, thank you so much, Barbara. Appreciate it. And I did see that out of the corner of my eye by the time I got to a point where I could say anything. Yeah, you get show brain. Those of us who have hosted shows, I think, all know this, where like you'll make a mental note of something that you want to bring up later, or you'll think about stuff before the show that you want to talk about, and then usually you don't remember any of that stuff until, I don't know, 3 hours after your show is done. Oh, I was going to say that. Oh, well, I forgot. We don't have scripts, folks. This is a reality show. All right. So, and thank you all. I see all the thank yous and everything in the chat. Thank you all for being here every other week after every other week. It's so much fun to get to perform for you guys and to share all this stuff that, I mean, in some cases I'm discovering it as I go. You know, I've never played that arrangement of a particular selection from Sleeping Beauty before. I keep almost saying Swan Lake, different ballet. Also by Tchaikovsky. It's a lot of fun, and thanks to Paul Carganella for starting up the network in the first place and giving us all this incredible opportunity, and thanks to Gary and Christina and Heather for all your work, behind the scenes, social media posts, all that, drumming up audience members for us, wherever possible. You guys are amazing, and we couldn't do it without you. So thank you so much, and we'll see you again in a couple weeks. Good night.